to this week's episode of Mixed Media Monday. Today I am going through all of my stacks and stacks of jelly prints, and I've decided that it is time that, although I think they are all fabulous and beautiful, they need to be used. So I am flipping this one over because I love the other side. And I'm drawing lines on it so that I can cut it all up. If I had been intelligent about this, I would have used the grid that is in the background there and just lined up the paper, lined up the ruler, and drawn lines rather than having to measure things off. But essentially what I'm trying to do is create four-sided shapes that are either rectangles or squares, and what I need to do is have it so that each side of the rectangle is at least 1 inch or 1.5 inches, so that I have the ability to ensure that all of the area that I want to cover will be covered. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my shears, and these are for sewing. So all of you people who sew, don't yell at me for using my sewing scissors on paper, but I wanted the zigzag quilting look so that I could line everything up, and because I'm going to use several different patterns of jelly plate prints, I wanted to make sure that everything was kind of quilty in the end of this. And that's really the only plan that I started out with for this project. Was I really wanted to use my jelly prints, and I wanted one jelly print to be the central, and I didn't want to cut up that page. I wanted the whole page to go on. So I had to create a border or a frame for that one jelly print that I absolutely adore and wanted in this as the centerpiece. So that's kind of where I started off, was just create a border for main jelly print, which you haven't seen yet. And so I don't know that I was really concerned about color really. The way that I picked my jelly prints for this one was making sure that each print had a color from one of the other prints. So this print has a bit of green in it, and it has blue in it, and it has a little bit of red spattered in there, and it's a really layered kind of print. And this next one, it has those green kind of hints to it. It has the orangey color of the main one that I'm going to put down. It has a bit of yellow, it has a bit of purple, and so this is kind of my central piece that I'm going to cut up next, because it's got the orange for everything, it's got the greens, it's got the pinks, it's got the purples, and that one is the one that really makes everything kind of cohesive. Once again, I'm using my shears because I want everything to be able to line up nicely with the zigzag. And I didn't necessarily have to be so perfect about it, but I did want the edges to be straight, and that's why I drew the lines, is because when I was thinking of creating the quilting kind of effect, I wanted to make sure that all the edges lined up and that all the edges were straight. There's nothing worse than trying to do a quick project and then not having any straight edges and not being able to line everything up, and then it slows you down right down. So then I thought I'd organize all of these. I thought I'd organize them by size, I thought I'd organize them by color, and I just kind of kept moving them around and organizing them and sorting them, and then I realized, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to randomly grab them anyway, so there's no point. For these prints, for this stencil and this print, I went through and I measured off the first card. I thought, okay, well, we'll measure it, we'll make sure it's perfect, the perfect size. But for the other ones, I really just gave up. For the other ones, I figured that with the zigzag kind of guiding how I was cutting, I could mostly get the lines straight. And because these ones are going to sit on top of the other patterns, they don't have to sit into the pattern of the other zigzags of the quilted pattern, I don't really truly need to worry about making sure that they are perfectly square. Whereas the other ones, because they butt against each other, then they need to make sure that they have the right edge on them. But because these ones are going to sit on top, I don't need to worry about that overly much. So I picked out 4 words I didn't have a fifth. If I'd had a fifth, I might have been able to use it, but I end up getting rid of the word create because it doesn't make it to the page, and I didn't want to have 4 elements. I wanted to balance the eye with 3 elements, and that really worked out well with the seek, believe, and trust. I really like both sides of this page, so I wanted to keep part of it, and that's why I only did the end portion. And then once I had it all cut out in the right shapes, I was kind of sad that I had used the really nice part on this other project when I could have used that blue on something else. But that's one of the problems with jelly plate printing, is that when I really love a jelly plate print, I really don't want to use it for anything. But at the same time, I can't just create a gallery of prints because it would be full within the matter of moments. So once all these are cut out, I'm going to continue to chop the rest of this one, make sure that I have enough to go around that frame, and then I'm going to start the frame. Now I went off camera for quite a bit of this, and the process was quite tedious. I'll share with you what I learned, but I'm going to skip past most of this. So one of the major things that I learned from this specific project was to start at the spine of the book. You'll see me fiddle with the edge of the book for quite a while. It took me quite a while to kind of figure out how to make it work now that I had glued down a whole bunch of stuff and nothing was working out spacing wise. So in the event that you want to create a project like this, just start along the spine. Do that vertical line that is right along the spine of the book first, and then work your way away from the spine towards the edge of the page, because you can always trim things around the edge of a page, whereas once you get to the spine, there's nowhere else to go. So with this one, I'm starting in the wrong corner, and I'm going to work my way towards the spine, and then I'm going to have a problem. I'm going to have to jimmy rig it and kind of go through and trim things up and try to make them fit. But I'll show you that in a moment. So I did want these colors to be random. I didn't want there to be a pattern, and I haven't actually looked yet to see if I did end up adding a pattern or if I had a pattern partway around or what. I haven't looked at the overall project to search for that. My intention was definitely randomness, and my intention was also to make sure that not any one color was touching the same color. So I wouldn't have a blue beside a blue, or a pink beside a pink, or an orange beside an orange. I would just make sure that there was, an unevenness in randomness, I guess you could say. So this is the problem I had. I still have about a centimeter, so that's about, or a little bit less than a half an inch. So because I still had that on there, it became a problem because I couldn't deal with the spine. And I didn't want the next piece to deal with the spine, so here I had the spine and a pocket that I couldn't do anything with. So what I ended up doing was just chopping a tiny little piece and starting from there and then gluing it down and seeing where we got to. So I'm going to go through the edges here and there, and I'll glue them down. And then this one, the way that I compensate for that corner is I just add another piece in there and try and follow the pattern that we had before. I'm kind of frustrated with this corner because I didn't think of starting at the middle from the beginning, but it was a good thing to learn. So what I'm gluing these on with is just the heavy matte gel, and this is from Golden. I have refilled the 3D matte gel Art Basics Finnabair container because the lid screws on nice and tight and my product stays fresh that way. So I did take the matte gel and fill up the Finnabair gel, and that's what I was using. Now this acts as a really fast, nice glue. You do, however, have to make sure that you smooth everything down, and that's why I'm taking the little rubber thing and smoothing everything down with it. And then I'll come up the other side, but my measurements were off once again, and I didn't have any place for this to go. So I just kind of stuck that on there, thinking that he'd create something in there, and that was okay with me. So nice, now that it's all nice and smooth, I have taken my heat tool and dried it all off a little bit, and then I'm going to add this next piece. And the way that I add the next piece is I just threw a whole bunch of the heavy gel onto the page because it's a heavy cardstock I'm trying to stick down, and I want it to stay stuck down. So I took the heavy gel and I applied it to the page in a big gob, and then I smoothed it out with my spatula. And then I will put the focal print onto the page. There we go. Now, on first look, it doesn't look like any of the stuff going around fits into this. But if you zoom in quite close, you can tell that there is all kinds of orange, there's all kinds of purple, there's all kinds of yellow all throughout this flower. And then you can tell that there's pink in there and little shreds of this and little shreds of that. And so everything kind of comes together by adding this one piece. Now all the words are this purple and blue, and the purple comes in from the flower, and the purple also is joined in by one of the collage pieces that has purple on it. So yeah, so I am going to just smooth it out like I did with everything else. I'm going to add another word, and this kind of follows the theory of following the visual triangle, so to speak. So I'm going to create a visual triangle. When I'm doing my work, I don't actually think, oh, now it's time to create a visual triangle. I don't think that at all. What I end up doing is, oh, this looks really good here. This other thing looks really good here. Well, let's see where we want to put this other one. And I try it a couple places, and then I adhere it. So it's not as though I am consciously saying, this must be a center point, or there must be a visual triangle. I don't do that at all. I just put things together so that they look good, and quite often the color theory and design theory kind of plays itself out, and I end up with whatever those things tell me I should have. So now I'm taking this honeycomb stencil, and I suspect that this is a Diane Reevely stencil, just because of the design on it and the type of mylar that it's on. So I think that this is a Diane Reevely one, and so it would be new, and that's why I don't know for 100% certain. And all I'm doing is I'm going around and I'm covering little areas, and I'm bringing white back into this project to make everything kind of come together. And then I'm going to throw some in the center of that flower, and once again I'm thinking about odd numbers. The paste that I'm using is the Liquitex flexible molding paste. I like using that in my journals because it will never crack or peel or have any problems like that. So the next thing I did is I went through my scraps drawer, and I found this piece of paper in the scraps drawer, and I wrote, "Today I will trust the process, seek new experiences, believe in myself." The list goes on, but those are the main three that I had for this page. So one of the things about stamping one letter at a time is that it becomes very difficult to have everything in a perfect line. If you do want things to be perfect and in a perfect line, you have to create that line and then look through your stamp block in order to make sure that everything lines up, or you can always buy one of those Stamp-A-Ma-Jigs to make sure everything lines up nicely. But with me, with art journaling, I don't really worry too much about any of that stuff. So today I will trust. These stamps are recollection stamps, and I believe they are just off the shelf at Michael's. The next stamp I'm going to use is from W+9. It's a cute little alphabet that I just adore. And I cut a lot of this stuff out because I kept going off screen and fiddling with the little letters and stuff. So I figured that you didn't need to watch that. And so I'll just show you, when I'm going through and stamping all the words on there. So sometimes you have to realign things on your block, and that's okay. Don't get discouraged by that. I didn't leave enough room for my stamps at all, so I had to, or the whole word, so I had to go through and make sure that I remade the word. So here it is all nice. I'm going to ink my stamp, and then I'll just stamp it right on there. And I love that these 3 fonts, these are my 3 go-to font stamp sets. So when I say that I'm going to seek new experiences, I don't mean that I need to go on a grand adventure. I mean that I want to talk to somebody I've never talked to before, or I want to try some sort of product that I've never tried before, or I want to, go out and do something I've never done before. And so to seek new experiences doesn't mean it has to be big and flashy and fabulous. It can be just the simplest of things, And there I go. I'm going to write believe in myself. So today's paper mixed media episode is very much about paper piecing. It's very much about using the Gelli prints and a way to use them. And it's very much about thinking a little bit of yourself, trusting that you know what you're doing and where you're going, and that continuing to go there is beneficial. I grabbed my shears so that the top layer would meet with the background layer, and then I add it to the page. And I'm taking all of these little bits and pieces of scraps that I have left over from the background, from the frame, and I'm trimming them up and I'm placing them around here, and I make it so that they're all perfectly placed. Like I moved them around several times, I replaced them several times, but then I didn't take a picture, and then I took it all off so I could start gluing things down from the bottom layer to the top. And now, I always do this, and I've mentioned this in other videos where I don't take a picture and I use the same supplies and I create something totally different. So I wouldn't say that this is a problem. I would say that this is an adventure, and it's just perfectly fine. So once I start doing this, I'm just going to add that to the page, add that strip. Then I'll add the next strip, and then I'll add all the little pieces. And see, I've already deviated from the original plan. So we'll just throw that in there, and then we'll go on once everything is glued down. Now, everything on this page, all of the color on this page is from Gelli prints. Now, I always use acrylic paint for my Gelli prints. So there's no movement of any of the materials in this entire page because I have used Gelli prints and acrylic paint. And I really like that. That was really freeing. It's the first journal entry that I've had that has been like this, where I didn't have to worry at all about the interactions of covering the page. So I went through to seal the whole thing and make sure all the layers were all nice and cohesive. And I didn't even have to think, oh, is this going to smudge? Oh, is this going to move? Do I have to be careful here? Do I have to be careful there? Because the answer was no. I could just go through and layer it all on, and away we go. And that was quite liberating when it comes to paper piecing, because often I use watercolor crayon or sprays or something, and those things do have some movement to them when I go to seal the page. And I have to alter my technique. There was no worries that anything would move. So once I get this layer on, I decide to leave it alone. And it wasn't just that I decided to leave it alone. It was that life was calling. I had to pick my kids up from school. So I left this project just like this to dry, and I walked past it for the next couple days. You don't have to do that. You can take your heat gun to it and dry it and all that. But before you use your pens, especially these Faber-Castell Pitt pens, make sure that all the layers of your piece of work are completely dry, because it may feel like the top layer of your work is dry, but the lower layers of all of your adhesives and everything and all your gel mediums, they're not necessarily going to be dry, especially right from the get-go. And even when they're warm from your heat gun, that doesn't mean that they're dry, it means that they're warm. So make sure that everything is dry, or else you ruin the nib of your pen. And I know that patience is not the virtue of most creatives. So what I do in order to prevent myself from ruining my pen nibs by, running out of the energy to wait, is I go and start another project. I flip to a different book. I grab a card making, ATC making, some other portion of my hobby. I go reach for that and I start creating something else to take my mind away from what is drying. And so when I take this pen to the page, I didn't want to make this a complicated thing. I did think about Zentangling. I did think about going over every single zigzag line with the pen. And then I got to thinking, no, I'll just go around the lettering and the immediate pieces of the page. And we'll just leave it there. I'll add a little bit of doodling, meaning the effect of adding a couple stitches so it looks like there's sewing on the page, but there's not. Gives a little bit of dimension to the page. And then once I'm done tracing out around the words and the top elements, then I feel like I will be finished with this project. I switched hands there. I don't know if you missed it or not, but I switched hands. And the reason that I switched hands is because I have a problem where my right hand often will go numb. And during this project, my hand went so numb while I was recording that I could no longer feel my fingers. So I switched to my left hand temporarily so that I could use the other hand, so that I could rest my right hand and shake it out and get some circulation back into it. So there's a little bit of doodling there, and there's a little bit of doodling there, and then I will basically be finished. If you like this project, make sure that you give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I do put out a Mixed Media Monday episode every Monday. Here's the close-ups of this page. You get to see all the different dimension and the details of the jelly prints, and you can see all the color variation in this piece. Once again, thanks for watching this episode of Mixed Media Monday. Join me again next week.